what's up everyone? So today we have the Stihl. It's a FS131R, but more importantly, it's a 4-mix. So I want to go over what a 4-mix is, the benefits of it, and what I don't really like about it, and should you consider getting one in comparison to it's a normal 2-cycle engine. Very first thing, what is a 4-mix? Well, a 4-mix is a 2-cycle engine that runs on a 4-cycle idea. So basically what ends up happening is there are valves underneath this cover, and the valves kind of help it run more like a 4-cycle engine. And when doing so, according to Stihl, it gives you a couple benefits. More or less what ends up happening is the bottom end is still lubricated by the engine oil, fuel oil, 2-cycle mix, whatever you want to call it. But in addition to that, some other necessary components such as the cam gear, such as the valves, pretty much everything is still lubricated by the oil in the fuel, except it is running as if it's running in a 4-cycle. It has an intake, it has an exhaust stroke, so it kind of combines the two worlds together, using the same fuel with this, I guess, current or more advanced technology of a 4-cycle. That's pretty questionable, but it gives you a couple advantages. What are those advantages? Well, let's discuss it. Some of those advantages are as follows. According to the website, it's more efficient. I can agree with that. Every single time the piston goes up, it's not having a power cycle, so you're going to have less fuel being consumed with every revolution. That makes sense. Lighter weight, I definitely agree with that. If you get a 4-cycle weed eater or anything of that sort, it's heavy. It needs oil reservoir, it lubricates the bottom end with oil, it's just heavy, it requires more material, more metal, it's generally bigger, and it just gets heavier. Whether or not the additional weight's really all that much more depends on your actual machine, but in general, 2-cycles are a lot less weight, and this is a bridge in between them, so these are generally lighter weight than a normal 4-cycle engine. That's technically, it's supposed to give you better power performance. I don't really agree with that one. I feel like they're basically the same. Maybe someone who uses it every day will disagree, and there might be a person out there who says there's a 10% gain here and there and blah 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 blah, but real world, no, I really don't see that much of a benefit in power, but according to Stihl, that's what you get. So yeah, so there's a couple benefits. Mainly, I think the two that are actually valid. They are more fuel efficient and they are lighter. The second one is definitely a lot better because you don't want to be, especially if you have a large area, you don't want to be carrying around a heavy machine all day long. That gets tiring. Even the strongest person in the world can get tired after lifting a moderate weight. So, it's better to keep things as light as possible while giving you better economy or efficiency, and this happens. So there's the benefits. Now, what are the cons? The cons are a little hard, so let me go over them. For smaller ones such as this, they are pretty decent, but some of the cons that transcend all kinds of machines, mainly just the smaller versions of the 4-mix, are as follows. You do have to have valve clearancing. It has valves, and you do need to clearance them. They're not as easy to clearance as a normal valve would be in a small engine because they do have a special rocker, and that will require a modification of a tool or purchase of a specialty tool. I prefer to modify rather than buy a specialty, but I'll leave that up to you. But you do need to do it. That's actually what this machine's on my table for. So there's a con right there. Another con is you have to use their specific mix of oil. There is a mix of oil that they recommend you use for 4-mix engines. Granted, every Stihl recommends you use their oil, of course, but when you get into larger versions of these, they don't have a needle bearing on the crankshaft and the connecting rod. They actually just have a bushing. That oil is there, the special oil is there to help maintain that bushing into good working order. This one doesn't have that problem, I don't believe, but some of the larger ones, like the big backpack blowers, they do. That's quite a big problem. Another problem is it's more complicated. Let me explain. If you were to remove this cover, you're going to find a cam. That cam is responsible for lifting the valves for whatever particular stroke it's on. And when you start including additional parts, especially plastic parts, which this has, you're going to add unnecessary wear, you're going to add unnecessary complication, and you're adding that complication and wear to save efficiency. Now, like I said, efficiency is good, but at what cost? This is going to go through a tank. I haven't done 100% like testing on it, but in general, you're not going to have to fuel nearly as often, but you're still going to have generally a decent amount of fuel consumed in comparison to others. But what you are going to have is wear that other machines will not have. A normal two-cycle engine just has passageways. They have a piston and ring and passageways. This also has the exact same, more or less the same thing, because there is a passageway to lubricate the bottom end, of course. But on a two-cycle, there's very few parts in it. It's a very simplistic design. That's why it runs so good. When you have simplicity, you do have inefficiencies. I totally get that. But if longevity is your concern, it might not be the best of ideas. Another problem I have with these is the cost of repair. You know, carburetor work and all that stuff, that's all the same. Don't get me wrong, it's not a problem. The problem comes when you start to run into engine problems, like you need new rings, you need a new piston or anything like that. That type of job easily scraps this machine. A normal two-cycle, yeah, you can get away with it. Just take the cover off, buy a new piston and ring, take the cylinder head off, put a new sealer on when you're done, boom, done. It's not that expensive. It's really not that hard, especially for something as small as this. Blowers and stuff, yeah, maybe that's a little bit more in-depth, but they're also more expensive, so you have more leeway. This, however, if you need any type of work like that, it's a pain. You have to take everything apart. The valves have to, like the cylinder has to come out, you have to take the cam out, you have to take the lift rods out, or the push rods, all kinds of stuff. Timing it becomes a real pain. It's not hard, don't get me wrong, but it just becomes a pain. And your labor is going to quickly add up just because of the complexity that a two-cycle does not have. Now, this isn't a rocket ship, don't get me wrong. It's not like you have tolerances that are super critical, but it is still more complex, which will take more time. So that's another thing I'm not 100% a fan on, but here we go. What can you say? It's a Stihl. Now here comes the big part. This is the end. Would I recommend buying this? Everyone knows if you don't know my idea on Stihl, I would generally say no. However, putting my personal preferences aside, I do think these are decent when they're running. Professionally, I personally would not recommend using these, just because you are using them a lot more. You're going to run into those issues I mentioned before. Residentially, I don't think you're going to have that many problems. Valve clearancing is not that hard, and you can do that a couple times in its lifetime, and you're not going to have to pay for really anything except for potentially the special tool, or like I said, modify it. But professionally, I see these all the time. They are not the indestructible wonders as the others. They will break down, especially if you use poor quality fuels. And if I were a professional, I would stay away from these machines. That's just my opinion, though. They are not as robust. The fuel savings you're going to see is going to quickly be outweighed by the repair bills and downtime. It's a pretty big one. I personally would not get a 4-mix. I know it's really hard to find ones that are not 4-mix now. Personally, if I were in that situation, I'd shift into a different brand and just find something that's simple. Echo is an excellent option. Personally, I would prefer the Echo. That's just my personal preference. They're still a good standard two-cycle. Some people don't like them. Some people do, who knows? But just coming from the complexity of this, I personally would find a non-4 mix. That would be perfectly fine in my opinion. Or a different brand that offers a non-4 mix, which is pretty much all of them. But residentially, it should be fine. A repair bill here and there, it's not going to be that bad. You probably will never see it unless you take no care of the machine or you leave fuel in it all the time over the course of the downtime. But in general, residential, no problem. A little big for residential use, but you know, some people like more power, more better. Professionally though, I would stay away. So if you're a professional, I would not recommend it. That's my opinion only. I work on them every day and I see their problems every day. So take that as you wish. Okay, I'm going to leave you at that. If you like what you see, keep watching, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. If you have any questions about this, definitely feel free to leave a comment below. If you have any issues with this, I do have a variety of videos, or you could become a member and I can definitely help you out. One of the membership perks is personalized service, so I'll be happy to help. Have a good night.